Previously on Gears.
Let's talk Formula One, as we're only 8 days until the start of free practice one in Australia, Melbourne. You know that there's been such a hive of activity and so much demand for the tickets for the Melbourne Grand Prix. They've built an extra stand, called it the World Champion Stand, and it is in tribute to the one and only Sebastian Vettel. How cool is that? Anyway, so if you're in Melbourne, it's going to be amazing. So as promised, we're going to go through all of the 11 teams over the next hour or so, right here on Gears, give you an understanding of who's racing and what we can expect during the first couple of races, because you can't predict for a whole season. Let me tell you, there's so much development that goes on. So the first team we start off, of course, is Red Bull Racing. They are the drivers and constructors champions for yet another season. They're based in Milton Keynes in the UK. Their team principal is Christian Horner. Their technical chief is Adrian Newey. And their drivers, of course, for the fourth year in a row, Mark Webber and 3 times world champion Sebastian Vettel. This year is the RB9. Of course, it uses the Renault-powered engine. All of the cars and all of the drivers use Pirelli tires. So, looking at the car, it is very much an evolution of last year's RB8. They have done some more intricate detail work when it comes to the rear of the car. And from the testing, what we could surmise from it is they didn't really show their hand. That's for sure. In the last day of testing, I think they were 11th and 15th down on the timesheets. It's something similar to what they were like in 2012. But Red Bull is definitely still the car to beat. Looking at their drivers, Mark Webber, he has put aside any rumor that this is going to be his last season in Formula One. Of course, Mark Webber is very much a fighter. A great Australian driver. Just a shame his pity is up against someone called Sebastian Vettel. Webber will have to really do well in order to secure another year within the Red Bull team. If not, more than likely he will get a drive somewhere else. A lot of people have said he might go and replace Felipe Massa at Ferrari. That's all rumor at the moment. But Mark Webber, I do expect to have a very, very strong season. But unfortunately, I do think that Sebastian Vettel will yet again get the better of him. Sebastian Vettel, 25 years old, triple world champion. The only other drivers who have done that in terms of triple world champion in a row are Michael Schumacher and Juan Manuel Fangio, who won 3 in a row. Besides that, Sebastian Vettel, strangely enough, you sit there and think he's such a little boy, and yet he is the most winningest championship driver on the grid this year. Yes, Button has got a championship, Lewis has got a championship, Kimi's got a championship, Alonso's got 2 championships, but Sebastian Vettel has got 3. He's very much the man to beat still in the world of Formula One, as hungry as ever. And also, him and his team really want to stamp Red Bull's testament of hard work since 2005 on the world of Formula One to become recognized as one of the truly great teams. The great teams in Formula One are McLaren, Ferrari and Williams. Red Bull want to get to that status as well. It's going to take a tremendous effort from the rest of the teams on the grid in order to beat Red Bull again during 2014. Looking at our next team, it is the Ferrari team, going in the order of the way that they won and lost the constructors or won the constructors championships from last season. Just hold on a second. I'm trying to make sure that when you look at the screen, I'm giving you the right thing here. But somehow I clicked on the wrong thing because I'm not very good with the Apple machine over here. Red Bull, of course, is the team. The next team that we're going to be looking at, of course, is the Ferrari team based in Maranello in Italy. The team principal is Stefano Domenicali, a man under pressure, but a man I think doing a very good job. Technical chief, yet again, Pat Fry. He will be very instrumental in the design of this specific car and the updates to it. The car is called the F138. The engine, of course, is Ferrari, and the tires, as everyone else, is Pirelli. The drivers Felipe Massa and Fernando Alonso. Felipe Massa had a very indifferent season in 2012. Really struggled with the car. And the way that you try and put comparison between teammates is relatively simple. If you go back to the Ferrari dominant years of Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello, specifically years like 2002 and 2004, where the car seemed so brilliant, it was quite easy to drive. And I say that loosely, because none of these cars are easy to drive, but it seemed easier to drive in 2002 and 2004. If you saw the difference between Rubens Barrichello and Michael Schumacher when it came to testing on the track, when it came to qualifying, there wasn't much in it. As soon as the car became much more difficult to drive, the likes of 2003, the likes of 2005, even 2001, Michael Schumacher was just that step ahead of Rubens Barrichello. We saw that last year with Felipe Massa and Fernando Alonso. The car in 2012 was born very average. A tremendous amount of work was generated by the Ferrari team to try and get the car better and better during the course of the year. But it was Fernando Alonso's brilliant skill in driving that managed to take it all the way until the last race, which is quite an incredible feat with a car that started off the season 2.5 seconds slower than anybody else. Felipe Massa, I think you got to say this will be his last year, regardless of what he does at Ferrari. He will be replaced in 2014, I believe, by either someone like Mark Webber, or if guys like Jules Bianchi have a brilliant season. My pick I would go for would be Nico Hülkenberg, but that's still a whole season away. Fernando Alonso is a 2-time world champion, regarded as the best driver on the Formula One grid. But in the last 3 years, he's lost 2 championships to Sebastian Vettel. He wants to get on level playing fields with Sebastian Vettel. He'll be determined as ever to make sure that he wins the crown, especially for himself, and I think especially for Ferrari. That's why he went to Ferrari. He wants to win with Ferrari, just as Michael Schumacher did. So going to be a very tough year for Fernando Alonso to just emulate what he managed to achieve in 2012. But you got to believe that he does have the skill and the ability to ensure that he's definitely a title contender come November 2013. There we go. That's a look at the first 2 teams in the Formula One 2013 season. We'll go through another couple in a few minutes from now. Another a little bit of James Brown. It is the Birdman Balls to the Wall rock mashup. Right here on Gears Balls Visual Radio, we're discussing the world of Formula One and the teams and drivers and what you should be looking out for during the 2012 season. We've done 2 of the teams, McLaren as well as, Red Bull as well as Ferrari. Let's go on to other teams. Let's go down to the Caterham team, who are based in Leafield in the UK. The team principal is Cyril Abiteboul, and technical chief is Mark Smith. They got 2 brand new drivers this year. Both of them have a little bit of Formula One experience. Charles Pic had a whole season last year with the Marussia team, has moved to Caterham, and their second driver is Guido van der Garde. Now, this is a team that had Vitaly Petrov as well as Heikki Kovalainen last year. And these 2 are relatively experienced. Vitaly Petrov, well, most probably not the greatest that we have seen. But Heikki Kovalainen is also a driver who drove for McLaren, has won Grand Prix. Very fast, very consistent. But because he's not a paid driver, and when I say the word paid driver, he doesn't come to a team and say, oh, hello, I'd like to drive your car, and I'm bringing you $15 million worth of sponsorship, so that will secure my drive. Heikki Kovalainen is too good for that. Heikki Kovalainen goes to a team and says, I'd like to drive your car. How much are you going to pay me? And unfortunately, we are now in a predicament in Formula One where paid drivers are beginning to disrupt everything else around us. So we've got Charles Pic, who comes with some decent money, also a very, very fast driver. He's going to be in a car that, unfortunately, from what we've seen in testing, looks a little bit more difficult than what the car was last year. Last year, that car should have been scoring points. They really had the pedigree. They've got some very good finance behind them with the owner, Tony Fernandez, but they didn't manage to score any kind of points. This year, I think it's going to be even more difficult because the car looks a little bit more difficult to drive as well. Plus, they have a little bit too inexperienced drivers. Charles Pic, as I mentioned, he's got a little bit of experience. Guido van der Gaard is one of those drivers who comes with a whack load of money into the team. Looking at his past results, hasn't really set the world on fire. So perhaps maybe just a little bit of luck could help him throughout the season. But I do think for both of these drivers, it is going to be quite an uphill battle come Australia, and then of course also come the next couple of races as they go forward. Moving on to a team which bothers me tremendously. It is the Sahara Force India Formula One team. It's owned, or the team principal is Vijay Mallya. The technical chief is a guy by the name of Andrew Green, and they've got two drivers in the sense of Paul de Resta and Adrian Sutil. The reason this team bothers me so much is that Vijay Mallya, in his personal capacity, is a very, very wealthy man. The problem is that this team is sponsored by one of his companies, which is called Kingfisher Airlines. Kingfisher Airlines has now been grounded by the International Aviation Authority. So I'm not entirely sure where this money that is coming from Kingfisher Airlines is able to sponsor the car. So I'm very concerned about that. The other one is the Sahara part of it. Sahara, a big Indian IT computer company, which, you know, hopefully they've got enough funds to keep everything going for the remainder of the season. I'm just very concerned about it. I don't know if Vijay Mallya is trying to maybe perhaps find someone to buy him out, and then he can carry on and try and sort out all of his other business interests. However, it is still, they usually do put up a really, really good showing when it comes to the to Formula One, and hopefully they will do the same during the course of 2013. They use a Mercedes-Benz powered engine. The car is called the VJM 06, Vijay Mallya 06, and of course they use Pirelli tires. Let's look at their two drivers for the season. They've got Paul de Resta, who was part of the team, of course, last season, teamed up with Nico Hulkenberg. Nico Hulkenberg has now moved on, and Adrian Sutil, who used to drive for the Force India team, is returning to the fold. Paul de Resta was pretty good in the first 4 or 5 races during 2012, but thereafterwards Nico Hulkenberg completely destroyed him, and Paul de Resta at one stage was touted even to go to McLaren to replace Lewis Hamilton. Unfortunately, his form didn't give him that opportunity. De Resta knows that this could be his last shot in Formula One. He really, really has to perform. And I really hope that Force India managed to give him a decent enough package to actually allow him to show his actual talent. Adrian Sutil, we know from the past, is a very, very fast racing driver. Having been out of a car for over a year now, might be a little bit to his disadvantage in the initial part of the season, but I'm sure he will come to the fore, and the two of them, I think, should fight very, very well together and hopefully inspire each other to actually go faster. And if Force India manage to keep themselves afloat and give these guys a decent package, I wouldn't be surprised to see these guys definitely in the points, specifically in the first 4 or 5 races of the 2013 season. All right, those are the next two teams that we're looking at. Coming up after this, we will look at Lotus and Marussia. It is Blur right here on Gears Balls Visual Radio at 1:30. We are talking Formula One, and I'm going through all of the teams and drivers for the 2013 season. We've done 4 teams so far. Let's get into our 5th team. One of my favorite teams. I just love this team specifically because of their attitude, their ethos, and of course their drivers. It is the Lotus Formula One team from Enstone in the United Kingdom. Eric Boulier is the team principal, has done wonders since he's joined there. James Allison, the chief designer, and then the drivers, Romain Grosjean, Kimi Räikkönen. The car is called the E21. They use the Renault engine, the same one powering that of Red Bull Racing. Ooh. what can I say? The car, in its first run, when it went out in Jerez, was just quick. And throughout the whole of testing in Jerez and in Barcelona, the car has looked very, very efficient, very quick, and most importantly, one of the better cars when it comes to the ability to preserve the new Pirelli tires. This is the biggest concern for all of the teams this year, and that is that the Pirelli tires seem to be degrading much quicker than they anticipated. This is also something that Pirelli had worked on in order to make the racing more exciting. Is it too artificial? It could be debated, but it's up to the engineers to try and make the cars look and perform a lot better with what they are given. The two drivers, of course, are, well, two serious superstars. One of them, a world champion, 2007 world champion Kimi Raikkonen, and Romain Grosjean, who's a GP2 champion and a man who had a little stint in Formula One, then was put on the sidelines and then returned last year for the Lotus Renault team. And I'm delighted. This guy, in my opinion, has got what it takes to become a world champion. He's blindingly fast, and on top of that, just has great skill. I got to believe, and I firmly believe, that last year he was given unnecessarily bad press for a couple of incidents that he was involved in. Yes, the one in Spa in Belgium was definitely his fault, and it should have been avoided. But for others, I look at them more as racing incidents. However, it didn't put him in everybody's great good books, and was even warned by his team that if he continues this way, he might not be driving in the world of Formula One. Romain Grosjean is my pick to do something incredibly special this year, and I'm putting my money on the first race of the season in Australia that Grosjean is going to win the race. When it comes to his teammate Kimi Raikkonen, he was desperately missed when he retired from Formula One. Thank goodness he came back, had a brilliant season last year, won a dramatic Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and he's just Kimi Raikkonen. If you know anything about Formula One, you just got to love this guy for his cool attitude towards life, but his incredible skill and bravery when it comes to racing Formula One. Raikkonen, if he's given the right car, of course he's going to be a title contender. The one biggest problem he has, I think, is fighting off his teammate Romain Grosjean. But Raikkonen is not one of those who's affected by anyone or anything that is around him. He knows what he has to do, and he goes out and does it. This is definitely a team that I think is going to be in the top three for 2013. I really hope that they have a very, very strong package, because both of the drivers truly deserve to have the opportunity to fight for the title. Let's get on to our next team, and that, of course, is Marussia. Now, the Marussia team is also based in the UK. John Booth is their team principal. Pat Simmons, for those of you who can remember, the ex-Renault man who was sort of kicked out of Formula One for a couple of seasons together with Flavio Briatore for, well, the Crashgate scandal of Singapore a couple of years ago. Now, they have two new drivers in Formula One, Jules Bianchi and Max Chilton. The car is called the MR02, and they have one positive and one negative. The positive is that they, for the first time, have the KERS system in their vehicles, which is the kinetic energy recovery system, which allows them to have extra boost and extra power in the car. Their negative, unfortunately, and it's not a disrespectful, it's just in the sense of in Formula One technology, is they're still running the Cosworth engine, which is unfortunately underpowered compared to those of Ferrari, Mercedes, and Renault. So that is a massive stumbling block for the team. When it comes to their two drivers, this is quite fun. You've got this young kid called Max Chilton. Also hasn't really set the world alight. Has won a GP2 race before, also in Formula 3000, did a couple of things, but nothing extraordinary. But he comes with bucket loads of money. Rumors are that he has a 3-year deal with the Marussia team, and on top of it, his backers purchase parts of the Marussia team as they go along till eventually buying the team out. Now, I can tell you that Max Chilton's father, to enhance and to encourage his son to carry on racing, bought the Carlin GP2 team just so that his son could go racing. So you got to, when we talk about money, they've got a lot of money. Max Chilton has done the majority of the testing for the Marussia team because they hadn't announced their second driver. So up until Friday of last week, 2 days before the end of the official testing, Max Chilton had done every single bit of testing in the car. All of a sudden, late on Friday night, it was announced that Marussia had signed the very talented what can you say, Ferrari young driver by the name of Jules Bianchi. Bianchi was also tipped to go and join Force India. I don't think Force India could do the deal with Ferrari. Jules Bianchi has now gone into Marussia. Now this means a couple of things. Maybe Marussia are now working on looking at engine deals for the future. By having Jules Bianchi, it looks like Marussia can change from Cosworth and maybe get a Ferrari package for 2014. Makes a lot of sense. Jules Bianchi is highly regarded by Ferrari, and I think Ferrari money is behind him joining the Marussia team. Now, the one thing about Jules Bianchi is he has tested the Force India. He's also tested the Ferrari, so he knows about packages of cars. When he got into the Marussia on the Sunday for the first time, he went out there and to, I think, the utter disgust of Max Chilton, was already 1 second faster than Chilton after 9 days of testing. So Max Chilton is going to have a very difficult time in matching, I think, the talent of Jules Bianchi. But I do hope both of them have a very solid season with Marussia, because we can't afford to lose any more teams in Formula One. So I think they are going to battle at the back end of the grid. But the way that the car went, all of a sudden they look like they could well be fighting with a very struggling at this stage Caterham. So expect some really, really good battles between the likes of Charles Pic, Guido van der Garde, Max Chilton and Jules Bianchi. Bobson Clark, right here on Gears, Balls Visual Radio, give a little love. We're talking Formula One, going through the teams and drivers for the 2013 season. We move on to one of the most famous names in the world of Formula One, and that, of course, is Vodafone, McLaren, Mercedes. Martin Whitmarsh is the team principal. Tim Goss is now the technical chief after Paddy Lowe has been put on gardening leave. It's the MP4 28, and it has the Mercedes-Benz engine inside it. The car on the first day of testing was super fast. And from there, I've got to say, don't discount the McLaren come the season. They may not have Lewis Hamilton, but they do have Jenson Button. Now, Jenson Button is one of the smoothest racing drivers you can find in the world of Formula One. He manages his races beautifully. He knows when his tires aren't working, goes in and makes some very, very strategic changes, and we saw that, we've seen that since he's joined McLaren. He's done an impeccable job. There is only one thing concerning him about Jenson Button at the moment. He's got a new teammate in the like of Sergio Perez, and I'll talk about Perez in a couple of moments from now. But Button seems to have adopted this change where it's sort of like he's daddy and Perez is little son. And I think he might be playing a little psychological game with Sergio Perez. But if he underestimates Sergio Perez, he might be in for a little bit of a shock. Sergio Perez is this young Mexican driver, had an outstanding beginning part of his 2012 career. 3 podiums. He scored a mass amount of points last year for the Sauber team, and then eventually got signed by the McLaren outfit. Sergio Perez comes with a tremendous amount of speed, but he also comes now with quite a load of pressure, because McLaren is, you know, very much like a Ferrari team, very much like even a Williams team, and very much like a Red Bull team of the moment. You don't just put a driver in there and just sit there and say, okay, this is an area for you to cut your teeth. It doesn't work like that with the top teams. The top teams want consistency, and they want professional drivers. Not to say that these guys aren't going to crash during the course of the season, and may all of their accidents be small accidents, so we don't have any major injuries. But Sergio Perez, I think, has got the blinding speed and the one-lap speed that I think will be a match for Jenson Button, and in many times it will be quicker. His race pace and his race management might come into question because he's got to still understand how the McLaren works as opposed to how his Sauber works. But last year he managed some beautiful races. The Sauber was a very, very good car last year as well. Perez, I think, is going to do exceptionally well at McLaren. He is going to have to deal with the way that they operate, which is very different to what he is coming from the Sauber team. I think it's a great pairing, but I do think that without Lewis Hamilton, McLaren lacks just something. With the greatest respect to Perez and to Jenson Button, I just don't know if they can win the title with what they have. But I do think first race of the season, McLaren is definitely going to be right up there, so don't discount the McLaren team. Let's move on to a team that has had dramatic changes over the last 6 or 7 months, and that of course is the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula 1 team from Brackley in the UK. Ross Brawn is their team principal. Technical chief is the very, very experienced Bob Bell, and their drivers this year are Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. For the past 3 seasons, they've had Nico Rosberg and they had Michael Schumacher. But I'm not entirely convinced that Mercedes really gave it their all. And there are certain reasons for that. There are reasons of the Concord Agreement, which no one, not everybody had signed to in the favor that they wanted. But now that that is signed, all of a sudden Mercedes are saying, okay, we're in here for the long haul. Let's push things a lot further. They've signed up Niki Lauda to head up the whole of Mercedes Motorsport. They've got Tom Wolfe involved in the team. They seem to have taken Paddy Lowe, although he'll only be able to start in 2014. It doesn't necessarily mean that Ross Brawn will leave the team, but it could put Ross in a bit of a precarious position. Their biggest signing, one has to say, is managing to lure the likes of Lewis Hamilton from McLaren all the way to Mercedes. A gigantic pay packet, and then also there will be big expectations on the young Brit. He is a world champion, of course, as we know, and a man who probably should have had a couple more championships had McLaren given him the right package over the years. So Lewis Hamilton comes in to team up with Nico Rosberg. These two guys raced against each other in karts many, many years ago. They are friends. But when it comes to racing, they won't be that friendly anymore. Nico Rosberg on the one side won one Grand Prix last year in China, but really hasn't set the world alight. For the latter part of the 2012 season, Michael Schumacher completely dominated him. This will worry him because Lewis Hamilton is younger, he's hungrier, and in my opinion is faster as well. So Lewis Hamilton, I think, is going to dominate Nico Rosberg. Rosberg is really going to have to find something within himself to try and be a match for Lewis Hamilton. They've downplayed their expectations for 2014, but I think they are playing a little bit of a cat and mouse game. I think this car is going to be a lot better than what people think, and I do think they are going to win more than one Grand Prix during the course of the year. All right, in this batch, let's look at one more team as well. It is the team from Switzerland. It is the Sauber Formula 1 team. It has the only female team principal that we have in Formula 1, Monisha Kaltenborn. Their 2 drivers are, I think, a very exciting pairing. Nico Hülkenberg and Esteban Gutierrez. The chassis is the C32. They use the Ferrari engine. The car itself looks, in my opinion, the best out of all of the Formula 1 contenders. They have adopted some very interesting changes, aerodynamic changes on the Sauber car that have been picked up by the likes of McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull. And all 3 of those teams have adopted what Sauber have in their car for this coming season. So I do believe Sauber have a very, very strong package. One advantage Sauber have or has, is that last year it was one of the few cars that managed its tires so exceptionally well. And the way that things are looking so far, this could be a tremendous advantage for them. Looking at their drivers, we've got Esteban Gutierrez, who comes also from Mexico, comes with a tremendous amount of sponsorship, sort of the same sponsorship as Sergio Perez, and that comes from the world's richest man, and that is Carlos Slim. So, what about Esteban Gutierrez? He hasn't raced in Formula One. He's done some testing, and that's basically about it. Finished third in the GP2 season last year, so it does have some credibility behind him. GP2 to Formula One, unfortunately, quite a difference, and will find the going pretty tough, especially against his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Gutierrez does have the pace. Will he have the mental capacity to race Formula One that amount of time without incurring too many accidents? Nico Hülkenberg, in my opinion, one of the best drivers on the grid. Any car that he has driven, he's been exceptionally fast in, whether it be Williams, whether it be Force India, and whether it be Sauber. Last year, he totally dominated Paul di Resta for the majority of the season. Was touted, I think, to perhaps replace Felipe Massa, but maybe that call came from Fernando Alonso saying, not yet, I need to get the title, and maybe I don't want to be beaten by this young German. I really hope that Sauber can give Hülkenberg the package he deserves. He is a very, very fast racing driver. He's qualified in pole position before, and I really think he has what it takes to be either a world champion or definitely a Formula One Grand Prix winner. My tip for the first Grand Prix of the season is I think that Sauber are definitely going to finish within the top 5. 2 more teams to go. That'll be the Williams team and have I missed out one? Oh, Williams and Toro Rosso. And it is Calvin Harris that feels so close. 6 minutes after 2 o'clock. Gears with Sasha Martinengo. We're going through the final 2 teams and 4 drivers for this year's Formula One season, and we move on to or they call it now Scuderia Toro Rosso from Faenza in Italy. Of course, originally was the Minardi team. Franz Stost is the team principal. James Key, very good designer, ex of Sauber, is with them. And then it is the STR8 using the Ferrari engine with 2 drivers. And I tell you why, the reason why I love this team. These 2 drivers hate each other with a passion. And I think that's good for Formula One. Danny Ricciardo and Jean-Eric Vergne, they've kept the same lineup. Now you've got to understand, the Toro Rosso team is the junior Red Bull team. And basically, drivers get put into the Toro Rosso team. And if they truly perform, they will make their way to Red Bull. It's as simple as that. Go back a few years, Sebastian Vettel started in Toro Rosso, showed what he could do, went to Red Bull, now he's a 3-times world champion. Jean-Eric Vergne, Danny Ricciardo, last year, you got to say a 50-50 kind of season between the 2 of them. You can't say that either of them really did anything exceptional, but have been given a chance yet again to do it. Danny Ricciardo, with the Italian name, is from Australia. He finished 4 times in 9th position last year, so scored some healthy points for the team, which I think is always what a team like this is looking for. Jean-Eric Vergne, similar kind of performances. He finished 8th 4 times last year, and his highest ever grid position is 11th. In the qualifying stats, you've got to say that Ricciardo has a slight edge, but in the racing capacity, Jean-Eric Vergne actually, I think, is a slightly better driver. This is going to be a mega battle between 2 teammates. They're hoping to fight with the likes of Force India, with the likes of Williams, and with the likes of Sauber. They should be able to do that if they've got their aero package right. They've got a strong enough engine to do it, but whether or not their aero package is strong enough, we'll have to wait and see. But concentrate on these 2 guys to battle with each other, which could unfortunately leave both of them without a drive next year if they don't focus on what their ultimate goal is, and that is to try and replace Mark Webber. My money is, I think Jean-Eric Vergne will come into his own this year and perhaps get the better of Danny Ricciardo. And then our final team, last but not least, is one of my other dark horses besides Sauber for this season, and that is the Williams Formula One team. The car is the FW35, Frank Williams, and their 35th model of Formula One. Frank Williams is the team principal. Mike Coughlin is the chief principal in design, and their two drivers, Pastor Maldonado and Valtteri Bottas. Also the only team that has a lady as one of their test drivers and third driver, and that of course is Susie Wolff. Now Susie Wolff, this is very complicated. Susie Wolff is the husband of Toto Wolff, who has a share in the Williams team but now heads up Mercedes from a technical point of view, as well as Mercedes DTM. So a little bit of conflict of interest, but it seems as though everybody's happy the way that this thing could work out. Now we look at their drivers. Pastor Maldonado from Venezuela. And it's very unfortunate because we had the passing of Hugo Chavez, who was the president of Venezuela 2 days ago. And one of the first reports that I saw, and I predicted it, I sat at home and I said, you know what, some buffoon is now going to say, Pastor Maldonado's sponsorship in jeopardy because of the death of Hugo Chavez. Nothing about the condolences to the Chavez family or the Venezuelan people, just sitting there going, where's Maldonado's money going to come from? Pastor Maldonado, yes, is backed by the Venezuelan government, but he's also got some very serious business backers in Venezuela as well. I don't think this is going to be a problem for him, and I don't think that is on his mind, besides the close relationship he did have with the former president of Venezuela. So that in its way will just weigh on him for a while, but he will know that he has got to get in there and drive the car. He won a great race in Barcelona last year, holding off the likes of Fernando Alonso. It was Williams' first victory in 8 years. Williams seem to have their package looking a lot better. Williams is a team that is basically the third most successful team in Formula One. They deserve a lot better what they've been getting. They have struggled with finances, but it seems as though things are back on track, and they do have a very, very talented driver lineup. Pastor Maldonado retains his seat from last year. The man who lost his seat last year was Bruno Senna. Now, Bruno Senna had buckets of money from Brazil, but the Williams organization realized that they have something even more special, and this is my choice of Rookie of the Year, and in my opinion a future world champion without a doubt. I know I'm putting my neck out there, but I really have tremendous faith. I saw this young driver drive in GP3 and he was spectacular. I watched him the whole of last season in the Friday sessions for the Williams team, and 85% of the time Valtteri Bottas was quicker than either Pastor Maldonado or Bruno Senna. We don't know what he's like in racing conditions. He hasn't raced in Formula One. He didn't race the whole of last year. He could be a little bit rusty, but I have tremendous faith in this young man. Valtteri Bottas is 25 years old. It'll be his debut race in Australia next weekend. If the car performs the way that it has looked relatively good in testing over Barcelona over the last 2 weeks, I think they will definitely qualify in the top 10. Maldonado, we know, is exceptionally fast, but Bottas, I think, is equally as fast, and I think this is what Maldonado needs and what Bottas needs. They need each other to push each other along and hopefully ensure that they really have consistent top 10 finishes when it comes to the 2013 season. So there we go. Those are the 11 teams. Those are the 22 drivers who will start next weekend when it comes to the first race of the season in Melbourne, Australia. I still sit there and think that Romain Grosjean is going to win the first Grand Prix. I think we're going to have McLaren right up there. Don't discount Red Bull, but I think also the surprise package will be Sauber and Nico Hülkenberg.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Gears with Sasha Martinengo on bulls.co.za.